Last week was weird, man. I logged off for like 5 days to go to the Coachella, and then the US basically started World War III. And here's how our warhawk-ass media justified this latest bombing in Syria.
I support President Trump's use of American military power this week,
but
the administration still does not have a Syria strategy.
Basically, Fareed's saying, I like that we bomb shit, but I also hate that we bomb shit without any strategy for how we're gonna bomb more shit. But the US media loves a good old war almost more than I love showing off these thighs in 4 consecutive Instagram posts because I don't skip leg day, bitch. Also, haven't we heard this justification for bombing Syria somewhere before? Oh yeah.
Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria from where the chemical attack was launched.
Man, our memories are worse than Jeff Sessions at a Senate hearing. Just a year ago, Fareed had this to say about all the bombing in Syria.
I think Donald Trump became president of the United States.
Now, I'm no Stonewall Jackson, but it doesn't seem like this bombing stopped chemical weapons from being used in Syria, guys. Also, here's another fun throwback Thursday where we ruined an entire region while playing world police in an identical fashion.
We have also concluded that the judgments about the severity of the threat posed by Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, WMD, were presented with a certainty that was not justified.
It's the same old virtue signaling dog and pony show since before I was born, as we cripple entire regions and topple regimes just like we did in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Egypt, Pandora.
Despite explicit warnings, the consequences of the invasion were underestimated.
But then again, I don't think we invaded Iraq to stop them from using chemical weapons or to find WMDs, just like we weren't really interested in spreading democracy. That does look like a good spot for a McDonald's though. And by the way, speaking of chemical weapons, the OPCW watchdog is only now entering Duma to confirm that chemical weapons were actually used. You know, that old classic bomb first, ask questions later policy, a policy that's worked out really well in the Middle East thus far. Now, I'm not a gambling man, but I'm willing to bet this is why we leveled a few neighborhoods in Damascus.
If the president in France and the UK decide to strike Syria, don't you think that story would be a bigger story than Comey's book that's released on Tuesday?
Now you might be thinking, wow, Hassan, are you a fan of dictators then? Don't you think poisoning your own citizens is terrible? And I know this might go over some people's heads, but you can oppose a government without advocating to bomb its citizens. But in this case, chemical weapons and biological warfare is merely used as a justification for Western imperialism before we inevitably escalate into full-scale, boots-on-the-ground military intervention. The fact is, the American government doesn't actually give a shit about the Syrian people. Because if they did, I don't know, maybe we would have probably let in more than 11 Syrian refugees this past year. Also, if we hate that Assad is a murderer, which we do, I think, chemical weapons kill far fewer people than conventional weapons like bombs and small arms. Or missiles, you know, like the 110 Tomahawk missiles we launched at mostly unoccupied bases at the low cost of $1.4 million a missile. Now that's a real good use of money, especially when considering that only around $55 million would fix the water crisis in Michigan that's poisoning our citizens. Speaking of which, if poisoning or murdering innocent citizens justified full-scale bombings and interventions from other countries, then we should be on the lookout for a Syrian airstrike on Flint because we're poisoning the shit out of those people right now. Or imagine if China bombed our police departments for extrajudicially killing our unarmed citizens all over the country, specifically 9,000 plus lives since 9/11, like Deontay Yarber, who was killed just last week when police riddled his car with 30 bullets in a Walmart parking lot. Now, if that seems crazy to you, then perhaps extend that same line of reasoning to the recent bombings in Syria. Missile strikes only contribute to 2 things. 1, filling up coffers of fat cat defense contractors and the retired generals who inevitably go to work for them as we pay Raytheon millions more to replenish those missiles we just used, perpetuating this horrific cycle of violence for the financial interests of the US military-industrial complex. And 2, the further radicalization of Middle Easterners against the countries that just leveled their entire neighborhoods with a precision strike. So if bombing Syria still seems like a smart policy to you, then I want to leave you with the words of this wise man.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Now look, I'll admit, I don't know how to fix the problem in Syria, but neither does Donald Trump, and neither did Obama. But what I do know is that bombing shit has not worked and will not work. I'm Hassan Piker. Share this video if you're against a possible world war. Leave your thoughts in the comments as to how we can solve this conflict, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Hassan D. Piker and on Twitter at Hassan the Hun. And this has been The Breakdown.